Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Avian Picture Show. I am here with the Cinema Romantic.
Hello there.
I I can't do a Grievous voice, my dude.
I know.
No, I'm not even gonna try because it's just my voice is gonna crack and I'm gonna become a 13-year-old pubescent boy. And then we are also here with Erik Fedje,
I am also here.
and today we are here to discuss Obi Wan Kenobi, the new TV show that just finished airing on Disney Plus. We're going to be discussing this show and probably largely how we feel about Star Wars as it is right now. So kick back, relax, and just listen to what we got to say. And if you want to chime in, head down to the comments with a time code about your response to our conversation. So, I wasn't really sure how to really start a conversation about this, because there's so many ways to talk about this show. So, I actually have a spinning wheel of Obi-Wan, Vader, Reva, Leia, and Roken and Tala. And I figured we're just going to spin it, and whoever it lands on is we're going to start talking about.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
All right, cool. Here we go. You guys can't see the wheel, but
Who did it start with?
uh, it started on Reva.
Oh, oh dear.
I'm screenshotting this, and I'm gonna
I'm
put
like,
it.
somehow I knew this.
I'm screenshotting this just to show that, okay, like right now it is, what time is it? It is
10:07.
10:07. Command F4. Yeah, I'm gonna prove that it did land on Reva. I feel like, of course, it landed on the character that everybody's most at odds about.
Yeah, let's just get it out of the way then.
Yeah.
How do I actually have never screenshotted on this laptop before. How do I?
Should be
Hold
like
on,
Control Shift 4
Command Control Shift
or Command.
4.
That's how it is on Mac.
Command Shift.
What you got?
Control Command. I am hitting various command
Or Alt.
Alt F4.
Shift 4.
What computer are you using?
A Mac.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be then. If it's a Mac, it should be. It's either Control or Command. I don't remember. It's there's Shift 4.
That's what I've been hitting those, and it's still not.
It might be disabled. I know.
Oh shit. Well,
I believe you.
Okay, it did land on Reva. So, how do we feel about Reva?
We're gonna go into it hard, aren't we?
I mean, I didn't like her at first, but looking back on the show as a whole, I did like what they at least tried to do with her character.
Yeah, and I did not really mind her. Like, she's a supporting antagonist that makes sense for the show.
Yeah.
And they tried to do something interesting with her arc. It's just that it was kind of undercooked. I felt like it just, I don't know. It could have used a little more or a little less in certain, trying to ride that line.
Yeah.
I think the crux of all our conversations today, especially my biggest criticism of the show, is all the chances that this show had to be like above, that could do better than other Star Wars stuff. But at the end of the day, it turns out to be so mediocre that it's like, well, I don't know why we were hyping ourselves up for something like this. Not that I was particularly excited about this show when it was announced, but they had every chance to like really do something special with this compared to other stuff. They had over 40 years of this Obi Wan character to like really build up with, and I
The
think
iconic actor playing him too.
yeah, an iconic actor. And for me, the biggest thing is this show does so much to like take away from others' properties. Like they kind of just copy and paste, but do it poorly. And I know we'll probably go into it more when we talk about episode by episode. Um, but like in episode 4, there's so much that's just taken straight out of New Hope and Fallen Order, especially. And that's how I feel about Riva, is that I've seen this character done way better other times. And the fact that she gets so much time and the fact that the character's really not that interesting. I mean, there's an argument that could be made that the 5th episode kind of does a little bit more with her, but I just don't care. And I'm just kind of clocked out. I don't know.
See, for me with Riva, I feel like the way I look at her, I think it was intended that she was supposed to be like a character that we have seen before. Because I feel like the whole point of Riva to me was to be like a direct inverse of Anakin and to kind of be kind of like Obi-Wan faces Anakin again without having to have Vader be there all the time. Because when you look at Riva's like arc throughout this show, it is like the exact opposite of what Anakin did, but it's still like she comes from training up in the dark side but has that pull to the light side, where Anakin was raised in the light side but had that pull to the dark side. And then at the end, when they both had those options to, really decide if they're going to commit to the dark side or the light side, i.e. killing kids, she decided to not do what Anakin chose to do.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting parallel. Yeah, I hadn't even thought of it that way.
Yeah.
I think for me though, the bigger issue with Riva is just this character arc has become very familiar for Star Wars. Just in like, the shows, the games, even the movies a little bit, like the idea of, oh, Imperial person who we initially think is going to be like more of a villain ends up, oh, actually they turn to the good side, they're or whatever. It's basically, a microcosm of the Anakin turn.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically taking that same emotional beat and just giving it to, they did it with Callus on Rebels, or the entire plot of Battlefront 2. Obviously the Fallen Order connection as well. So for me, it was just kind of like going through these motions again, and it didn't really have enough. It wasn't fleshed out enough to the point where I felt like, oh yeah, this is another worthwhile story to add to the other ones that we've heard of other Imperial defectors. So and that was what was frustrating for me. It was like, I mean, okay, but I've seen this story before. So,
Yeah.
which actually just got me thinking. I hadn't thought of this until just now, and I'm not usually someone who suggests, "Oh, this would have been better if it was instead of whoever did it." You just use, "Oh, it's a classic character that we love." When it comes to Star Wars, but I'll agree with this actually. Is would that character arc have been better if the character was just Barriss instead?
Or how about Asajj Ventress or like anyone else?
Right, because it's like you have these characters already, especially with Barriss, because her arc has never been picked up. Like what happened to her after that? And I always thought it would make sense. Oh, she ended up being an Inquisitor, but obviously also having issues with that. Like I don't know.
Well,
So if it had picked up now that, oh, instead of this new character, it was just this like we're wrapping up that other aspect of like the Jedi and overarching story.
And I think that's something we should discuss, because I'm watching this show, and the one thing I was really hoping for from this show was really down to two things. And one of them is a character. One of them would have been Hayden Christensen as Anakin, because when they made that announcement, I was actually very intrigued by that decision. I didn't think that he was going to come back in any capacity at all.
Right.
And I thought that, well, is this the chance that we finally get to see him actually, act well as his character? And maybe they'll give him some better writing and all that. So I think that was one of the main draws. And the other one was, how does this come off of Clone Wars? Because we've had a good 10 years of Clone Wars. And it really fleshed out Anakin and Obi-Wan. And this show was like the perfect excuse to like get them back, put them in costume of the Clone Wars era, and like really showcase to like a larger audience, because more people are going to watch a live action Star Wars show than they are an animated show. I think that's pretty well established at this point. And like we could have really had a lot more Clone Wars influence into this show. And I remember hearing, well, Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen took a lot of that from the show, and what Matt Lanter did and what James Arnold Taylor did. And that was like, I was excited to hear that, because like up to this point, I wasn't really enthused with this project at all. And then we get to the show, and yeah, they have like 2 scenes where they actually get to show their acting chops as these characters, as like the classic characters. And it's like, I don't know, I was left flabbergasted, because they spend so much time focusing on stuff that just doesn't matter. And a lot of it is just repeat over and over and over again. And it's not good repeat. I mean, we're back to the same like mentor kind of like taking care of a child arc again.
Which that's one of my other big problems with it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much of that that's like, it's a huge turnoff at this point. And I think as we come to discuss some more, I'd really love to illustrate how done with Star Wars I am right now. I just like, I had
Before you move on to that though,
interest.
I did want to say, like, I actually really agree with what you're saying. I think that is probably the biggest problem with this show, is that it lacks that kind of heart that Clone Wars had. Like that, just the fact that the characters were more fleshed out, and like we've seen them fleshed out now, and now you have the opportunity, like you were saying, to bring the actors from the movies playing those characters and kind of bridging the gap, that weird, like, between Clone Wars and the prequels, where one's just vastly better written than the other. Bridge that gap in this new show, but like combining elements of both to basically be like, yes, like, I don't know, like it would hit a lot harder if it was like, oh, like this is working and it's really bridging like this franchise, which is clearly what it's supposed to be doing. But yeah, no, I agree. That's what's wrong with this.
I do want to say though, I agree that like I do as much as I think that this show is fine and it's really not as bad or as good as people make it out to be. And that I do agree that it's not as good and well fleshed out as the Clone Wars was. However, I think you did kind of contradict yourself by saying, you said that like not as many people watch an animated show as they do a live action show. So it's like, since this is a live action show, could they really have done references to Clone Wars when, like you said, a lot of people didn't watch Clone Wars that are gonna watch this show?
Oh, absolutely.
My counter argument is that didn't stop them with Mandalorian.
Yeah, exactly.
Bringing in Ahsoka and Bo-Katan.
But I mean, with Mandalorian, they do like give a little bit like of description of who exactly Ahsoka is.
Yeah, and I'm sure were Obi-Wan to do kind of what we were suggesting, it would do it in the same vein that Mando did, where there's like a throwaway line to explain it to the casuals. And then, if they actually, that sounds interesting to them, then they'll want to go and explore Clone Wars. I think that's what you were trying to get at.
Yeah.
Mention that, yeah. So I don't think it's a contradiction.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so either. Not at all.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess for
the clarification.
I guess for me, it's just like Ahsoka literally shows up in a show, and it's like you kind of have to like introduce her to people that didn't know her. Whereas, why would Obi-Wan at any point be like openly talking about like his memories of the Clone Wars.
It's not even okay because I don't. When I say bridging to Clone Wars, I don't necessarily mean just rotely referencing things that happened in it. And I'll say I'm glad that there were no like obligatory like them in the armor from Clone Wars moments because that probably would have clashed, um, as far as like the visual aesthetics or whatever. But like, shit, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, I don't know.
I think you could have used. I disagree with that. I think what was interesting was to see that there was an Attack of the Clones
Yeah,
era thing in this. And what
Mhm.
I was thinking, and like really, the show at the end of the day, it really should have been focused on Obi-Wan and Vader. And that should have been it. And it should have been like those two characters and the trauma and what they were like back in the day. And like what I was thinking while watching it, especially after that fifth episode where they had that flashback, was like, why don't you just do that very early on and then do this whole thing during the show where he's like reliving memories and you sort of see that relationship as the war goes on. And especially because at one point in the Clone Wars, Anakin just acts like a fascist. Like he starts gaining that fascist mentality. And you can have scenes of that kind of slip in there to see this buildup of what he's slowly becoming. And then I think that makes the fight, especially at the end, a lot more memorable because there's all this anticipation built up. You have all these character moments coming together. You get a better idea of what the relationship would have been like going into that fight. So the stakes are so much higher, even though we know the outcome, if you know what I mean.
yeah. I think basically the point is that it had many opportunities to like heighten this to the level that like those other like the movies are held to. Um, and it was just a lot of missed opportunities of oh, but you could have done this or this or this, but you didn't. So now it just feels like a missed opportunity.
Yeah. We didn't do like the kind of like our initial thoughts thing at the beginning, but like
No.
the whole show is just that. It's just a missed opportunity. And I think
Yeah.
that's what hurts the most after sitting through all this because it's not very long. It's six
No.
episodes.
And it
They don't
also
even break an hour.
right.
But
And it was kind of frustrating where all of those kinds of strong character beats they start doing in like the last couple episodes, but at that point it's too late to like really make you feel something by the end of it because it was only like a quarter of the show instead of the whole show.
but I mean, I guess one of the things I kind of want to ask you guys is like, if they were to do the whole show where it is strictly focused on Obi-Wan and Vader for the whole show, what would that have really looked like? Because it's like it how often would they have had to have been like either interacting in some capacity for it to be like, yes, this is all about Anakin and Obi-Wan?
I know a cleverer writer than me could come up with a story to make that really interesting without having them either without having them have to take out the lightsaber every episode and just have another duel.
Well, like I don't even mean just like having a lightsaber fight every episode, but
No, but
I'm
I know what you mean about just like interactions or
yeah,
you know
I
how hostile that would be.
because
Um,
because
but
and I
yeah, it's a hard story to tell. That's why I was curious about what they were going to do with this Obi Wan Kenobi show because it's not like a whole lot could have happened that would make sense. That would be like a big event. Um, so it was always going to be tricky to tell the story, I think, and that's why I was intrigued to see how it went. Unfortunately, it just turned out, man.
well, but I mean like I feel like was it was episode 5, correct, where they were trapped. Obi-Wan was trapped with the insurgents, and Vader was
Yeah,
like bearing down on him. That to me was way more. it was a very good Obi-Wan and Vader episode because you see them like reminiscing about how they understand each other and how
Mhm.
their understanding of each other plays into this very moment. And it's like, I think that I agree that like the show could have done that throughout the entire thing. But I feel like having the whole show where Obi-Wan is just like barely escaping Vader every single episode, I feel like that also would have gotten old after a while.
I don't know. I mean, to be fair, what they did wasn't very interesting either. I think I'd be a little more compelled if they had more character stuff than just these weird one-off episodes, which is a
Right.
major problem of all Star Wars right now, is the horrible one-off episodes. But like, I don't know, there's a way you can write this where you don't have to even have them interacting at all. And the hardest thing, and I know, and you know that's why they did Leia, was why the hell would Obi-Wan get off the planet? That's the biggest thing because there's like
Right.
no reason to him for him like going into the show for him to even leave Tatooine. So that means a interaction with Darth Vader at all would make no sense because it's just that's the way it should be. But um, the Leia excuse, which I think that really butchers a lot of canon and adds a lot more complications than it does answers overall. Like, I get why they did it, but I also don't think they really fought it out very well. I don't know how you guys felt about that, but
I mean, I guess for me, it's like you said, like there had to be a very good reason for Kenobi to leave Tatooine. And so it's like, I think having to go save the other kid that him and Bale swore that they would protect as they are the last hope of the galaxy, I think that is a very good reason to leave Tatooine.
I agree, and
And probably
I
the
think that's kind of
only
the issue,
reason.
though, and that's why when I was always before the show came out, my idea of like an Obi-Wan show would be very meditated, grounded on Tatooine like the whole time. It wouldn't be like a spacefaring adventure, which is what we obviously end up getting. Um, but maybe that's also where I'm thinking like maybe this shouldn't have been a show. Maybe it should have been a movie or I don't know, some like a book. Like tell this story like an Obi-Wan story,
I,
but because it had to be in the TV format and it had to be stretched out like this, it's kind of why we have so many problems with the story. Obviously, it has to be spectacular. He has to fight, you know, Darth Vader and shoot uh, stormtroopers, and
mm,
and it has to do that, and it also has to, you know, be enough content to fill that time. So it's like, oh well, maybe we don't tell a story where it's just an old man in the desert wandering around.
yeah, I definitely do agree. I do think that this should have been a movie,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
but
definitely.
I think, but
Solve a
unfortunately,
lot of the pacing issues.
I guess for me, I'm just like, it's not a movie, it's a show, it's what we have. And so it's like, I'm just trying to like really look at it as like what it is we got
Mm-hmm.
rather than try to think about, oh, what could have been.
What could have been, yeah.
Because I think that's when we go down the rabbit hole of like, like we had I don't know if I like I paid very close attention to how people were talking about the show. We had the
Mm.
one dude, I forget his name, but he was just like, he was like complaining about how the show hadn't had Clone Wars flashbacks yet.
Oh yeah, I
And
saw
then he
that. Yeah.
finally and he was like, the episode before the one that did have Clone Wars flashbacks, he was like, I am heartbroken by Kenobi. Then he got that episode and he was like, yo, this is the best show ever. And it's like,
Yeah.
well,
It's just
it's the same show, my guy.
Mm,
So
I
yeah.
I think the big thing here is we need to like draw a line with Disney and kind of expect better content from them because like I feel like this whole Star Wars stuff right now is just like barely passable to like mediocre. And I feel like they have such a big IP, and they really should be doing better with it. And I think that's what frustrates me the most with this, because another thing that really bothered me was just the lacking quality overall, between like the writing and especially production wise. This felt far cheaper than any of the other Star Wars shows.
Yeah, I don't think that's a problem that's exclusive to Star Wars, though. I mean, that's something you see across basically every, Disney property since Disney Plus launched, where like,
Oh,
the
I
movies
agree.
feel cheaper in the MCU, or they're like, live action remakes with like unfinished visual effects, or just like everything, because the content machine now is so big, and that's why these Star Wars stories don't get the attention that they deserve. That's why none of the stories get the attention they deserve, because
I
it's
I
just a
think
machine.
I think I also just kind of want to add in though about this. I think the biggest problem with uh um Disney Star Wars, and this goes for like everything, even when they did try to do new things with like the sequel trilogy,
Mhm.
Mm.
they are way too reliant on legacy characters.
Yeah.
And I think that's what causes a lot of like the backlash about like why everything sucks,
Oh
and
yeah.
what, like, I think Mandalorian gets so much praise, especially season 1 of Mandalorian gets so much praise because we have zero expectations, whereas for the last however many years it's been since Revenge of the Sith, people have been thinking about a Kenobi show and what they think a Kenobi show should be. And as such, any Kenobi show that did come out, whether it was by Disney or Warner Brothers or Universal or whoever, it was never going to meet those expectations, you
Mhm.
know? And so for me, I'm really excited for stuff like, did you guys hear about how Taika Waititi said that he's not, in his Star Wars movie, he's not going to do any legacy characters?
Yeah, and I full-heartedly support that.
Yeah, and it's like, I think that'll be a project that is received well because there's no expectations for it. Whereas Kenobi, Han Solo, who else has gotten a spinoff? Um,
Well, they're doing a Lando one allegedly.
yeah, they're doing a Lando one,
Boba Fett got his spinoff.
Boba Fett. It's like people have expectations for these characters in their head, and so it's like it's never gonna meet and make anybody happy because I guess what I'm trying to say is I think Star Wars is at its best when it's 80% new stuff, new characters, and 20%, hey, here's what the old guys are up to.
Or I think if you're going to do it, you find that balance between those. Or also, if you're going to do something completely new, like what Taika says, or like Mandalorian season 1, where we have nothing, like it's just the same world, but we're dealing with all new characters and all new scenarios in a different situation. Do it that way, where you
Mhm.
kind of just go all in it. Or when you do these like projects of character study, a legacy character like Solo, like Kenobi, um, really dive into those characters, like really like give us that end of the extreme as well, and
Yeah,
really give these legacy characters like a reason for the story to be told.
yeah, I can,
Yeah.
I can, I can see that.
Yeah, but I think really ultimately you do need to find that balance, because the franchise can't be all one or all the other. It has to have that mix. So
Yeah.
find the balance in the force.
So I've been looking at this pretty negatively, I think overall right now, but I do want to mention like the one thing that I did like about the show, and it goes back to a character. Um, the very little bit of Vader we get in the show is probably some of the best Vader we've had in ages. I don't know if we all agree with that, but
Oh,
there was so much done with him that I
Yeah.
thoroughly enjoyed.
yeah. I if you, I think I've told Eric this before. I don't think it's up for debate that Vader is the most iconic fictional villain in history.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
not it doesn't matter if we're talking comics, if we're talking film, if we're talking TV, everybody knows Darth Vader.
Mhm.
And so it's like, I think that I am so happy that Vader has yet to really be like, I guess, overdone or ruined. You know, like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yeah, because it's like, I do often worry sometimes that Vader is going to end up kind of like the Joker, where it's
Mm.
like he shows up way too much to the point where people are going to be like, oh my God, it's this guy again. But no,
It
I
loses
think,
the intrigue of that character. You just always expect them to show up.
yeah, but no, Vader, especially in this show, he is still as badass as ever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, they've been doing a good job, I think. And especially in this, like, I don't know if it's the fact that it is Hayden under the suit, so it actually, like, it feels like it does connect, like, oh, yeah, that guy and that guy are the same person. Like, I don't know. I always felt like Revenge of the Sith kind of, once he's in the suit, my brain for some reason, like, oh, he's just a different guy now. But this one
Mm-hmm.
really, like, because we see his face, because like we have those flashbacks, because we know the personal history between these two versions of these characters, it did hit, I think, a little better with, oh yeah, Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader.
Yeah.
I
But
agree. He got the mannerisms down so
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And you always forget, like, before, like, even before going into this, like, how tall Hayden actually is. Because he's, like, a pretty tall dude to begin with. And then you have that suit on him, and he's pretty freaking menacing
Yeah.
in that thing. And, yeah, it was like, I will say, like, the episode, between episode 5 and 6, um, and a little bit of Free, there was like so many hallway scenes from Rogue One just with Vader, like so many moments that are just, you just know that are going to become iconic now.
Mhm.
And it's just like, that was a joy for me to watch, um, especially growing up with that being one of my favorite characters of anything, was just how well they deal with him. And it's, I don't know, how much it was James Earl Jones and how much it was voice replication, but there's a lot of delivery in this show, especially, that felt very different for the character. And you could really see, especially obviously in like the final scene where they started mixing the voices of Hayden and
Right.
James Earl Jones, you could tell that it was far angrier at times, and there was a little bit more nuance to it than normal.
mhm. Or I really liked how like they used the lightsabers, the lighting from the lightsabers to kind of like indicate when Anakin is talking versus
Yeah.
when Vader is talking.
Yeah.
Not, and it's not just like it's not just the lighting. It's like you said, it's in that voice shift where it's like when Anakin's talking, it starts to sound more like Hayden, but then Vader slips back in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That does a lot to
Yeah, and
really sell that.
they did the eye change thing again, um, where I don't think his eyes were yellow at the beginning of that conversation, and then once like the color of the lightsaber changes as well, um, you see like the Sith eyes come in again, and just that whole scene was so brilliantly handled.
Yeah.
And I get that like, I'm kind of contradicting myself because that's just straight up the Rebels scene in Twilight of the Apprentice, but it was giving a chance for both of them to really show their stuff, because I thought that was probably the best moment of Ewan McGregor's performance in the entire time he's played the character. I mean, across all three movies and every episode before this, there's just that one shot where he's like saying, "I'm sorry," and it's easily the best acting he's ever done with Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Or
felt the emotions from that I think you were supposed to. From when he's acting his ass off in Revenge of the Sith, but like the heart isn't there. I think it actually was there in this, and that's what, again, missed opportunity. The whole show could have had that sprinkled throughout it, rather than it all just being in that one moment.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and then one of the things I did really like, um, it was pointed out to me like after that episode, the last episode aired. Um, did you have you guys noticed how like in the Rebels episode that you mentioned, Zach, with Ahsoka,
With the side of
how
the helmet.
yeah, how Ahsoka got one side of the helmet, Kenobi got the other side, but then it's only Luke that
Yeah,
can get
Yeah.
the whole helmet off.
I
I've
noticed
seen that,
that.
and
Yeah.
Yeah, I
it's
don't
a
know.
neat thing. I don't know if it was like intentional, but that is a neat
I don't know.
thing that it.
Part of me wants to believe that it was intentional.
Yeah,
I absolutely do think it's intentional.
I
I,
hope
s-
so.
I really do.
Yeah,
And it's just the strength of knowing how to handle Darth Vader in general. And I think that was even apparent in Rebels too, because I thought the way that they did him in that show was also very well done.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And it's
Yeah,
interesting, we've gotten like the Matt Lanter, James Earl Jones kind of combination, and now this Hayden Christensen, James Earl Jones combination. And it's really
Mhm.
cool to see. Again,
Yeah,
we're seeing these Clone Wars actors and like these live action actors kind of blend in together
yeah.
and really like take a lot from each other, which I feel like was really the biggest
It
plus of this
unifies the
show.
characters across the mediums.
Exactly, because I feel like as much as everyone likes Ewan McGregor and like James Arnold Taylor, and then like Matt Lanter and Hayden Christensen, up to this point, I think for the most part, those have been for me very isolated portrayals. Like they feel
Yeah,
so radically different from each other that it's so hard for me to justify. Like as much as I like the prequels, I still don't. I still never thought that those versions of the character really ever had the same heights as the Clone Wars ones.
right.
So having that like final moment where you kind of like see it and you just can tell that this is the buildup of all that from the prequels combined with all that Clone Wars stuff.
Mhm.
And I think that was when they talked about doing the research and watching the whole show. I think that was like the one time that I actually saw it. And I remember I didn't watch it the night of. I watched it like the morning after. And I had literal chills watching that final scene with them
Yeah.
like the whole time. And I can't honestly say I've felt that in a Star Wars fan in like forever, like maybe since the wrap up of Clone Wars,
Yeah.
um, which is saying a lot because I
There's
think
been a lot since then.
there's been a lot,
Yeah.
and like I think I really wanted to like Kenobi going
Yeah.
into it.
Me too.
I think the premise at the beginning was a solid start. I mean, I didn't have a huge issue with it.
Yeah. Like I
And
said, I was really curious with what they were going to do. So,
yeah, and I think it was a great 2 episodes. And they did a lot of great stingers in that and had some interesting kind of like twists, like not really like huge anything twists,
Mhm.
but um, it was a promising start. And I think it's weird because I don't know if they needed more time or if they needed to do it in less time because I
Mhm.
think there's something nice to be said about giving it 2 more episodes for a season like this. But also, maybe they should have just had it as a movie and do like 2 hours and condense it down. Um, because it's just, I don't know, it feels very half baked. And I don't think, I mean, I'm going to give it a pretty low score here today. Um, but that's still not as bad as like Book of Boba Fett, where that just was a mess from the very beginning and they had no idea what they were doing with it. This was a show that they had some semblance of what they were doing and then they just really faltered with it every step of the way until they barely squeaked it in at the finish line for that
Mhm.
final episode. And it's I can see um I can see why a lot of fans like it. and I can see why a lot of fans hate it. I personally lean on the heavy dislike, and I get that there are like these fan moments in the show, but I don't think that's enough to justify the existence of this TV show at the end of the day. I really don't think they needed it, to be honest.
Yeah. I think for me, I don't think the show is so much as half baked as it is stretched out. You know, like because I do think that I do agree that this should have been a movie, and I am waiting for like someone to do like a compilation of all the scenes that only have Kenobi and Vader, not necessarily together, but just all of the scenes that have them, and then be able to watch all those in succession and just to see how the show looks then. Because I think that part of what makes a lot of the show get so, I guess, badly paced is just that it is very dragged out and stretched to make 6 shows, especially when they came out and said that, yeah, the original script of this show was a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they said it was a trilogy. They didn't even just say that. They were going to do 3 movies of this.
Did they say that specifically about this story? Because I always knew this was going to be a one-off movie at
I
first.
I from what I understood, they were going to split this all up into 3 movies. Like
Mm.
just this whole Obi-Wan New Hope saga stuff. Like that's what I just read recently, but I don't know, maybe I'm off base on that.
Yeah, I thought I read that because like I know that they did say that they were going to do a trilogy, but I thought I read that the script that they adapted this show from was what the first movie was going to be.
Yeah, well, because when I think of the trilogy thing, the thing I remember it being something like, oh, we're doing a Han Solo movie, we're doing a Boba Fett movie, and we're doing an Obi-Wan movie, is what they said way, way back. Um, and obviously all of those have now been spun off into television or completely unrelated stories. But maybe at one point they were meant to form, with the Maul twist at the end of Solo, was Maul going to carry through all of those. That's how you can tie those characters together. Is Boba
Yeah.
Fett, now Maul's the crime lord, he's bounty hunter. Have him feature in that story somehow, and then ultimately end it with the Obi-Wan versus Maul, and then maybe have Vader and all that fun stuff. That's what I remember there being something like that. And it would make sense because if they decided not to go that way after Solo didn't do well, and instead split these off into separate, different stories, but still focused on this character.
Yeah.
I
No,
think that's what happened.
Yeah.
I think that's very possible. Yeah, because when that Solo film like failed, it really threw a cork into the whole
Yeah.
Star Wars thing going forward. Like they didn't know what they were doing
Mhm.
then, and then now that was a failure, it's like, well, where did they go with it now?
Yeah. And I think that's why pretty much everything that's come out since then has felt really mid, with pretty much the exception of Clone Wars finale, but that's because that was written 9 years ago. So
I would also throw in Jedi Fallen Order into that.
I mean just the movies and the shows, because I
Okay.
think the games are completely different
Although
category.
I do also want to I kind of want to throw in at least episode 1 of Bad Batch was pretty good.
Yeah, no,
I agree. Yeah.
there's still nuggets of good stuff, like the finale on this one. I think we were all pretty positive on it. So there's still going to be those nuggets, but overall it is going to feel kind of like this homogenous Disney blah, for 100 reasons. But
I guess the thing I kind of want to add to that is, could we argue that Star Wars has kind of been like this, like, since the prequels?
I was
No.
gonna say, yeah, this is nothing new, and I know we've been putting the blame on Disney. A lot of people do, but this is just kind of where it's been for a while.
I mean, like we've been talking about like how great Clone Wars was, and I 100% agree. Clone Wars is the best thing to happen to Star Wars that isn't the original trilogy. But I think we also forget that Clone Wars also had its fair share of bleh episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the good far outweighs the bad in that show. There's a few like episodes, but most of it is like when I go through to watch it again, like every few months or so, like I don't skip a whole lot, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Uh, I guess to be clear, I'm not defending Disney.
No, I don't
I
think you
know.
would, but no, I agree
I
that it's still an ongoing problem. The buck stops with them now, so that's what we're taking issue with.
yeah.
But no, it was this way well before Lucas sold it. It wouldn't surprise me if it's why he sold it, is because he's like, that this isn't working for me anymore.
Yeah. Well,
Whatever initial spark he had is no longer with it. So I'll
I,
make it someone else's
I
problem.
feel like he probably sold it because he got tired of people like
Yeah, and I'm
saying
sure that contributed.
saying that he didn't understand his own creation, and I'm
Yeah.
like, bruh,
Yeah.
he knows more than we do.
Mm.
But I don't know. I guess when it comes to Star Wars, as much as I can help it, I try to look at every project like in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Because I feel like once you start comparing it, you're inevitably going to compare it to the original trilogy or to Clone Wars,
Mm-hmm.
whatever project we're talking about, and then it's just you're not even going to be able to compete.
Right. I don't know. You take the good, you take the bad. It's the balance of Star Wars.
Yeah, just like the movies preach, you got to look at the balance of it.
Yep.
We got to be like Ahsoka, my dudes. We got to be in the
Yeah,
middle.
but we do have to hold it to a higher standard, though. I mean, we can't
Yeah.
just allow it to be mediocre every
Right.
time.
Well, yeah, and I'm not saying that like yeah, just let things be mediocre, but I'm just like I just I think that it's like we have to look at each individual project. What did it do well, and then criticize it for what it did bad, instead of just being like, no, or yay. You know?
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think you have to do that with any bit of media, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that there's definitely a lot of stuff in Disney Star Wars throughout the years that's been pretty cool, like
Mm-hmm.
elements of it, but as a whole, it's a mess.
Yeah.
It's been a mess for a long time, and yeah, I think
But the all
Clone
devil's
Wars.
advocate here too, though. But yes, so was the previous Lucasfilm expanded universe. So
Oh,
continue
absolutely.
to
Yeah, and I'm not saying all that was perfect either.
right. But the fact that Disney let it fall to that again, is that would you kind of
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
what I'm.
perpetuating what it's been.
Yeah, I just think I don't know. There's got to be some good stories here in the near future, and I do think the Taika Waititi thing is a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but most of that is just because it's Taika Waititi for
Right.
me, and not really the fact that it's Star Wars. That has me more excited about anything, just for the fact that he's being put on that project. Um, and I think it all comes down to the creators and the people that Disney decides they're going to let run these projects because um, I know that we got Taika Waititi doing that, and then I know the Duffer Brothers are in talks to do something.
Mm.
Um, and that actually has me a little bit intrigued because that's what they're doing in Stranger Things right now, and I know that not everyone's
Yeah, I'm not caught up yet.
fully caught up. I think the everything that they're doing right now is really great on that show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's coming from someone that like going into like this newest season wasn't even really that
Right.
enthused about it. But like I'm finding the writing and like all this character work they're doing on that is just so well done. And
Mm.
between that and the boys lately, it's
Yeah,
been
for sure.
interesting to see how good TV can be if you have the right people working on it.
Right.
And I
And
think
Star
that's what,
Wars is not at that standard, but maybe it
yeah,
should be because it is such a huge franchise. Like
Yeah.
you expect more from it.
yeah.
I guess the way I think with it when it comes to Disney and how they're running Star Wars right now. So like what's his name? Destin Cutton, the
Mhm.
guy who directed Shang-Chi.
Yeah, and he'd done a
Mm,
ton of really good indie movies before that.
Yeah,
mm,
but like when he was talking about Shang-Chi and his experience on it, he was talking about like how like Marvel and Disney did very little to interfere with his project and he largely got to make Shang-Chi the way he wanted it to be made. I feel like Disney's problem with Star Wars is that they're not doing that with Star Wars. They're not letting the creators take the reins on Star Wars like they are letting them take the reins on Marvel.
Mhm.
And
yeah.
it's like, it goes back to like some studio interference is needed at times because we've seen that like when you let a guy make a movie that's completely his vision without any restrictions, you end up with Star Wars Episode 2. But then you also can't have too much studio interference because then you end up with Star Wars Episode 9.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think what Disney needs to start to understand when it comes to Star Wars is just let the people that love this franchise work with this franchise.
Yeah, I
I would
agree.
extend that even more to people who get this franchise more than just people who love it. Like, I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like how does one really like get Star Wars?
I don't know.
It's
It's a feeling.
I don't know. Yeah, but yeah,
I
just like
I almost feel the way I've kind of viewed it is the people you want to do Star Wars are the people that are almost like too afraid to even do anything with Star Wars, if you know what I mean. Like
Well, what the way the fan base is now about harassing people online, I don't blame them. But
that and like you want people that really want to tread carefully with it, even on not even just from a fan point of view, but just from a storytelling point of view. I mean, it's one of those like scenarios like we need more of that like individual input like we had with the original trilogy, like the fact that uh, Lucas really gave the opportunity to have other directors kind of like take the helm on it
yeah.
is really something that we kind of need with modern Star Wars right now. And like it'd be cool. I'm waiting for today to see a Lynchian Star Wars story, like where we actually get that reality where David Lynch actually did a film, or someone kind of emulates that style, because I feel
but
like
within this world, yeah,
exactly.
within yeah.
I think that's something Marvel, like we were discussing, Marvel's doing a decent enough job of kind of like letting go of the reins a bit
Mm-hmm.
and letting enough people kind of come on board that have their own takes on the MCU and whatnot
Mm-hmm.
to kind of do their own thing with it. And I do not think it's perfect at all. Like it is still very far from being ideal, where the creator really has a lot of control over what he's doing within a large property like Marvel Comics or Star Wars. But I think we need to get to that point with Star Wars because um, I'm feeling the same way that I'm feeling with Marvel right after kind of like like phase 3 wrapped up. Like
Mm-hmm.
you've done your stuff. You got your legacy characters done. If anything, now is the time to get really weird with it. Like
Yeah.
do whatever you want, because there's like no reason to revisit the legacy characters of Luke, Han, or Leia. Like the actress for Leia is dead. I
Yeah,
mean,
their
that's
stories are told.
they're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so why not get fun with it? Kind of
Yeah.
get weird with it. Kind of get scary with it. And I think that's what kind of bums me out, is because I think Clone Wars had inklings of that,
Oh
where
yeah.
they had these individual stories that were so onto their own that
Yep.
they almost didn't feel like Star Wars. they felt like these new creative like avenues that, you know, you could take Star Wars in all these weird, fun directions. And when you have Disney playing it so freaking safe every time they try to do something, that's where the frustration kind of builds up, because we're at that point where Star Wars really needs to branch out. Otherwise, no one's going to have interest in it anymore.
Yeah,
And I'm
it really
really,
just needs to expand.
I'm really thinking that we're kind of hitting that threshold where people are starting to realize that Star Wars is kind of, you know, getting to the point of
Limited.
retreading itself. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think I think a lot of us have kind of realized that for quite some time. But the
Mhm.
key is to get the fans that are just blind fans to really buy into that mentality, because I don't think a whole lot of them have really kind of latched onto that yet. But once you start to, then the fans are going to start to want more unique stories. And you would hope, Disney being Disney, they would respond to that in whatever way possible. I mean, bring in some of the like kind of the art housey directors to do more stuff and just get as bizarre with it as you can, because that's how you keep this alive, is doing
Mhm.
new
Doing
stuff.
different things, keeping it fresh, keeping it unique and interesting.
Hmm.
And then you sprinkle in the familiar, but like really it's you want it to feel like it did the first time, because Star Wars was brand new when it first came out. So that's why it's so important for the franchise to continue to innovate, or at least try to aspire to how grand it felt at the time.
Yeah.
I
But
don't
I
know if you can
feel,
ever recapture that, 1977 feeling anymore, but I don't know.
I I think when it comes to like getting Star Wars to the point where it is going to be branching out, especially with the circumstances that it's under right now, I
Mhm.
think w- it's an it's important that like when these new Star Wars projects come out, we need to have like these like kind of discussions after these projects come out where we acknowledge like the good and the bad about it,
Yeah.
because I think what's happened with Star Wars right now is you have to think about like how Disney looks at the response to these things.
Mhm.
Disney looks at the initial response, and whatever the initial response is what they're going to assume everybody feels about it. That's why they stopped doing Star Wars movies, was because people bashed on Solo, and then only after like it was out for a few months did they start like saying like it actually wasn't that bad. But then Disney had already decided, okay, we can't do Star Wars movies anymore.
Which is like their process makes sense from a business standpoint. And that's what's frustrating about it, is that it does make sense. And
Yeah,
it's like, well, yeah, I see why things are the way they are, but they could be better.
yeah,
mhm.
and but like I guess it's like the way I always look at it. It's like when it comes to movies, it's like there is no getting around the fact that movies and filmmaking are an art form that people can make money from.
Mhm.
And so I think it is kind of important to also acknowledge that like there is that money at that financial aspect to filmmaking, that it's like it's going to affect what gets made from that
Right.
point on.
And it always has been. Like that's just the nature
Yeah.
of the
Yeah,
biz. But yeah,
and so it's I guess
the clash between art and business.
I guess just and just show of like I guess good faith to Disney and showing that we want them to do better with Star Wars. I say we all just like try to be like, what is one really bad thing we don't like about Kenobi, and what is one really good thing that we liked about Kenobi? Like,
Well, I think straight up the worst thing, the thing I like the least about Kenobi is what I said, the hollowness, the fact that none of it really feels as grand as it should. Like, why are you telling me this story if nothing that's happening really matters?
mm,
But on the contrary, I think the moments where it actually does seem to go for it, and I think that kind of just gets at the heart of what we've been saying here, the moments like in those last two episodes where it enriches what we already know, what we're familiar with, but it also takes those things into new directions, and that's what's interesting about this world, is that it has that, that you can do that with it. And so that's the good of it, and the bad of it are like two sides of the same coin. It's just a shame that this coin is just not worth all that much.
Mhm.
Right, Zach, positive and a negative.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, I have like the same issues with it. Like there was like, it's the missed opportunities. That's what it is. And it's not even just the fact of like the legacy characters that you could have put in, or like the all that stuff. It's the storytelling and just the way that they handle certain things and what they choose to tell and what they choose not to tell. And I think there are definitely moments that are very powerful in the show that either appeal to like a sense of like nostalgia, which is always, it's always going to work with people, but also to like a deep sense of character and um, a deep sense of trauma with like a lot of these individuals within the show. And I think if this if they were smart enough to really make that the main priority of the show, I think it would have been a far greater product and story overall. And I think there would have been a lot for Disney to be proud of here, because there's a lot of opportunity with anything with like these icon characters. But at the end of the day, they kind of fumbled and picked it up again and kind of went to like, the last few yards and made something. Yeah, but it wasn't pretty. I mean, this wasn't a elegant piece of media by any standard. Um, so I agree with Erik. I mean, it's kind of the same sentiment.
Yeah. I think my biggest negative with it is just I do think it is a very stretched story. It didn't need to be this long. It really could have been condensed. But the big positive that I'm going to give it is I think that the creators of the show did the best that they could given the circumstances of the whole business side of things, as well as just the time that the story was set in. Like, it is a very awkward area to set up a story about Obi Wan Kenobi. So yeah, I think
I did not begrudge the writers of this at all their jobs.
Yeah.
This would have been a tall order for anyone, I think. So
So
for all the reasons we've talked about here, where there's so many expectations and
yeah,
they're just not meeting them. I think a lot of it is just down to like Star Wars is supposed to be a myth, like it's mythology. It's like we want to see these characters because they're like mythical beings, sort of, and if it doesn't really add much to the mythos, then what's the point of this show? And that's kind of, I think, the frustration with it kind of lies with that.
Yeah.
I did want to say though, since we were talking positives, though, I thought to show goodwill to Star Wars or Disney or whatever, is we could name it something that is announced that's coming up that you are actually interested in. And I'd say for me, it's The Acolyte. We know nothing about it, but it sounds like it's going to be like completely new stuff outside of the timeline that we're in, meaning like it's like 100 years before the saga. And so something completely detached, but is still very much of this world. And just the people behind it seem like interesting creators. So, high hopes for that, but we'll see.
I think I'm actually really looking forward to the Andor show, which is surprising to me because when they first announced that, I was like, what do I care if he died in the same movie that he was introduced in? Like, I don't care what he was doing beforehand.
And it wasn't all that interesting to begin with.
He was an uninteresting side character. But then they released the trailer, and I was like, that is a beautifully shot show.
Yeah.
Like, it looks really it looks really good for a Star Wars show that compared to like what we've gotten these last few times. And like, I'm not usually one to like really make a big deal about cinematography. Like, I'll acknowledge when it looks good, but like, otherwise, I'm like, it's not like a deal breaker for me.
Yeah, it just looks like more effort went into it. Like it's like, oh, okay, if
Yeah,
Kenobi was this weak, it's because they were putting all their eggs in this basket, and
yeah,
maybe there's something to this.
yeah. So yeah, for me, I'm actually really excited for that Andor show.
Yeah,
Mm.
cool.
All right,
Zach, say something nice now.
they have a whole slate, my dude. There's got to be at least one thing that's piquing your interest.
Man, I don't know.
Well, there's Fallen Order too, right? That's coming out.
Yeah, I honestly that might be one of the top things I'm excited for, only because and I know we didn't really talk about it that much, but that's definitely one of the things in this Disney era that's stuck really well is the first Fallen Order game, which it's not a perfect Star Wars fan by any means. I mean, it still has its fair share of problems, but um, as far as like telling an emotional story, it's definitely been one of the best of this era. And I would say the video game's definitely something. And I mean, I'm cautiously looking forward to stuff like Ahsoka. The Acolyte is interesting to a point, um, and it is kind of cool to see that they're bringing in, like Duffer Brothers and Taika Waititi, and the other one that we haven't really even mentioned, the John Watts,
Oh
Jude
yeah.
Law show as well, where it's more of a coming of age story.
Yeah.
Like that seems kind of fascinating. But I think as long as the project feels unique and different, and it feels like they're kind of pushing the envelope, I will be cautiously optimistic about it. Um, Otherwise, like I can't say I'm all that excited for another season of Bad Batch,
Yeah.
you know.
Or
And I know that they're doing another Clone Wars style animated show here soon. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just at that point where I'm not gonna go out of my way to watch Star Wars anything when it comes out, unless it gives me a reason to go out of my way and see it. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I got you.
yeah, if it's all right, if you're real, I would like to give a suggestion.
Go for
Uh, I think it sounds to me like you've hit the same wall that I did with the Assassin's Creed series.
it. I hit that
Because
same wall too, to be honest.
yeah, I used to play I think that there was like a solid like 2 years where like 90% of the time I was playing an Assassin's Creed game, and then they would kept coming out with they came out with Odyssey, and I just kind of like slogged through Odyssey, and I was like, I really don't care anymore. I'm just so tired of Assassin's Creed. So I was like, when Valhalla was announced, I was like, you know what? Not gonna get Valhalla. I'm just gonna let it sit. I'm gonna take a break. It'll still be there if I decide to return.
Yeah.
And then I came back to Valhalla, like uh I played like a trial of it, and then I played it for like a week, and then I was like, oh my god, Assassin's Creed is so much fun. So it's like I would just say like if you really have hit this wall with Star Wars, just give it a year. All the content that's coming out will still be there.
Mm.
And then if you still are just kind of like, nah, then yeah.
And I
But
think
no,
that's something that used to be kind of part of Star Wars, I think. Like, when it was a special thing you only saw once every 3 years, right? You have time to go through that cycle where it kind of like dwindles in your mind. And then you get to be reminded about how great Star Wars is, when the next movie comes out or when the next season of Clone Wars comes out. So yeah, I think that's part of the issue I've always had with the Disney model is it's just like, oh, okay, well I just watched that, and then there's going to be another one next week, or soon
yeah,
enough. Even when it was, oh, we're going to do one movie a year, which to parallel your Assassin's Creed analogy, that seems to be the big problem with that, is that they had the pressure to release a new weekly or a yearly installment rather than actually telling meaningful and good stories for that world.
Mhm.
And so I feel like that's I don't know, it connects there.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and it's like I am glad that they are kind of cooling it with the movies,
Oh yeah.
because it's like for me, that hype that like Avengers Endgame or Star Wars The Force Awakens had, where it's like, oh my God, it's like big cinematic event of the summer,
Mm-hmm.
or Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. It's like that's how every Star Wars movie should feel like when it comes out.
Yeah.
It should be
Yeah.
like, oh my God.
That's what it's like. Rogue Squadron, I wouldn't be interested in, except for the fact that it's the first one in 4 years. So it's like, okay, what are we gonna do? Like, it's
Yeah,
gonna be Star Wars
Yeah.
again. Um, I won't be burnt out on it because I'll have had time to miss it.
yeah.
Mm.
But anyway, we're here to talk about Kenobi. But so I guess let's close out because I feel like we're ready to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would we give our number scores for Kenobi and why?
Who wants to start?
I'll just say mine because it's short. It's a 5 out of 10, perfectly right down the middle. It had stuff that could have been great. It had a lot of stuff that was just kind of meh. And ultimately, it just comes out to a big meh. Like,
No.
I don't feel any real strong way about it beyond what it means for, I guess, the franchise as a whole.
I'm in the same boat. I watched the Twilight movies here, and I had a lot of fun. I've seen most of them, and I tell you what, I've had a lot of fun just watching how bad they were and how baffling they are.
Mm-hmm.
But I do not feel that enjoyment when watching Kenobi. It is so middle of the road bad in the worst way possible,
Yeah.
and there's enough good stuff in it to be um to not say it's like the trashiest thing on planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a 4 out of 10 for me, honestly. I mean, I will never watch this show again.
Yeah.
I think I said in one of my posts, like, honestly, just go online and watch the Vader scenes if you're really interested in seeing some dramatic moments and some badass moments. But yeah, this wasn't hilariously bad, and this wasn't noteworthy good either. So
Um, I think I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. I think I agree with Eric. It was and you, Zach, about like it is a very average show, but I guess I personally feel like that there is a bit more good in it than bad that makes it at least two at least some of the episodes are at least revisiting. I don't know for sure if I would ever go back and watch the entire thing through, but I could definitely see myself revisiting at least a few of the episodes. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go ahead and
Okay.
give it a 6 out of 10 and drop it down from what I gave it in my review.
Fair.
fair.
All right, that is the end of our discussion with Kenobi. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys had anything input on what you would like to, on what was said here, please go down into the comments and respond with a time code and what your thoughts are. And we will see you all in our next discussion. I'm actually not entirely sure what that might be. No, I just
We'll come up with something there. We can either get a blockbuster or find some weird art housey film to talk about.
can we do Velocipaster?
I think we need to take a break with the dinosaurs, folks.
No, no.
I think we need to stop.
No, you're not going to talk him down from Velocipaster.
Velocipaster is a masterpiece.
He's been holding this over my head for like 3 years.
Uh,
I don't know what it is. I love Velocipaster. It's such
Have you
a.
seen it?
I have watched it.
You need to discuss a little bit of this after this recording's done.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah, we keep getting derailed. Let's do the outro.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I did the outro. Bye, everybody. We will see you all next time.
All right, see you guys.
So